My name is Roxanne Peachy. I was 31 when my almost marriage turned into a criminal case, and even now, some mornings, I wake up and still expect to see his coffee mug beside mine, like none of it happened. I used to think betrayal was loud, a slammed door, a screaming match, a dramatic confession in the rain. But betrayal, I learned, can be quiet. It can sit across from you at dinner, smiling with the same mouth that lied to you 5 minutes earlier. It can kiss your forehead before bed while planning how to ruin your life. I met Colin 4 years ago at the sports bar I manage downtown. I know how that sounds. Not exactly the kind of job people brag about at charity galas or corporate retreats. But I loved that place. I started as a bartender after college, worked my way up, and eventually became general manager of one of the busiest locations in our chain. My staff respected me, the regulars trusted me, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had built something with my own hands. Colin came in one Friday night with a group of friends from high school. They looked like they had stepped out of a glossy magazine ad for success. 2 corporate lawyers, a dermatologist, a finance executive, and a marketing director at some tech company. Colin was a real estate agent, charming in that polished way that made people lean closer when he spoke. He laughed easily. He remembered my name. He asked questions like he actually cared about the answers. At first, I thought his friends were just protective. They made little comments about my job, soft enough to pass as jokes, but sharp enough to leave marks. "Oh, Roxanne, it's so refreshing that you're happy where you are. Have you ever thought about real corporate management?" Colin always did like women who were grounded. I laughed because Colin laughed. And when you're falling in love, you teach yourself to ignore the first small cracks. Things moved fast. By 3 months, Colin was practically living at my apartment. By the 1-year mark, he officially moved in. The lease was in my name because I had been there longer and had better credit. It was a nice 2-bedroom in a modern building with a doorman, elevators that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, and security cameras in every hallway and corner of the parking lot. I didn't know then that those cameras would one day save me. For a while, we were happy. Or maybe I was happy, and he was just good at performing it. Colin made more than I did, especially during the good months in real estate, and his friends never let me forget it. Still, our families got along. His parents treated me warmly. My parents adored how ambitious he seemed. Last December, I proposed during a weekend trip to a mountain resort 3 hours away. Private dinner, lake view, ring hidden inside dessert. It was cheesy, but Colin loved stories he could tell other people. He said yes. For 1 week, I thought I had everything. We planned an October wedding. Colin's parents offered to pay for most of it, putting down nearly $40,000 in deposits for the venue, catering, flowers, and all the little things that make a wedding feel less like love and more like a production. That was when his friends became impossible. Suddenly, every decision needed their approval. The color scheme, the menu, the seating chart, the music. They had opinions about everything, and somehow, all those opinions came with little insults tucked inside. "Are you sure 6 o'clock works? Won't Roxanne have to be at the bar? Maybe dress shopping should be on a Tuesday. That's probably slow for her." "Colin, you deserve a wedding that matches your level." He never defended me. Sometimes he smiled. Sometimes he agreed. And every time, something inside me folded smaller. Then his schedule changed. Late showings, emergency client meetings, real estate conferences that appeared out of nowhere. He changed his phone password and started leaving it face down. I noticed. Of course I noticed. But noticing and admitting are 2 different things. The truth came from Sarah, one of my regulars. She came in every Wednesday for trivia with her coworkers. Sweet woman, mid-30s, always tipped well, always competitive. But that night she kept glancing at her phone, then at me, then back down again. During a break, she asked if we could talk privately. I took her into the small office near the kitchen. She looked sick. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you," she said, twisting her phone case between her fingers. "But if it were my relationship, I'd want to know." Her sister worked at an expensive salon downtown. Colin had gone in that morning for a haircut and spent nearly the entire appointment on the phone with someone he kept calling Baby. He was laughing, making plans for a weekend getaway, saying his idiot fiancé would think he was at a real estate conference. My chest went cold before my brain even caught up. Then Sarah showed me an Instagram story. A champagne toast at a fancy restaurant 2 towns over. In the background, clear as day, was Colin, pressed close to a woman in a silver dress, his hand on her waist like it belonged there. Melissa, his ex-girlfriend. The timestamp was 9:47 p.m., the previous Friday. At 9:52, Colin had texted me a photo of himself supposedly at home with his friends, wearing a face mask and holding a glass of wine. He had staged a fake night in while sitting beside another woman. I thanked Sarah. I comped her table. Then I finished 5 more hours of my shift with a smile on my face and my life collapsing behind my ribs. That night, I didn't confront him. I went home and opened the shared iPad we used for Netflix. Colin had logged into his iCloud months earlier when his phone was being repaired. He must have forgotten. There were hundreds of messages, not one mistake, not one drunken slip. Months. He and Melissa had been meeting at hotels near her office since February. They weren't just sleeping together. They were planning, laughing, mocking me. He called me useful, stable, a good temporary setup. His friends knew everything. Their group chat was full of advice on hiding the affair better, jokes about my job, jokes about me proposing, even suggestions that he should wait until after the wedding to leave so he could claim emotional distress and push for money in a breakup settlement. Then I found the message from the night I proposed. While I had been sitting at that Lakeview table, sweating through my blouse and practicing my speech, Colin had texted Melissa. "Don't worry, baby. This doesn't change anything. It's just business. You're the one I really love." I screenshotted everything, sent it to my email, backed it up to my drive, took photos of the iPad screen with my phone because some part of me already knew this wasn't just heartbreak. This was evidence. I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room while Colin slept at a friend's place, reading 4 months of lies until sunrise painted the windows gray. The next evening, he came home around 7, cheerful and careless, talking about 3 houses he had shown that day. He had not shown any houses. I let him talk. Let him drop his keys in the bowl. Let him ask what I wanted for dinner. Then I handed him the iPad. At first, he frowned. What am I supposed to be looking at? Then he saw Melissa's name. His face changed. Not slowly, instantly. The mask dropped, and underneath it was panic, then anger. "You went through my private messages?" That was the first thing he said. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "Roxanne, let me explain." Just outrage that I had found the truth. I scrolled to the message from the proposal night and pushed the iPad closer. "Read that one out loud," I said. His eyes filled with tears, but they weren't the right kind. They weren't remorse. They were strategy. He said it was a mistake. He said Melissa was his past and I was his future. Then he blamed me. Said I worked too much. Said nights at the bar made him lonely. Said Melissa understood him because they came from the same world. Then he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If you hadn't gone through my messages, we could have been happy." That was the moment I stopped loving him. Not when I saw the photos, not when I read the messages. Then. I told him the wedding was off. I told him he had 30 days to move out, legally, because even in heartbreak, I was careful. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Then he picked up his phone. I thought he was calling his parents. He wasn't. He was texting the group chat. "You're going to regret this," he said, thumbs moving fast. "You have no idea who you're messing with." And the strangest part was, he smiled when he said it. I laughed once. Not because anything was funny, but because the confidence in his voice sounded absurd. He was standing in my apartment after cheating on me for months, threatening me as though I were the one who had done something wrong. "You have 30 days, I repeated quietly. "After that, you're gone." I grabbed a backpack and started throwing in a few changes of clothes. I had already decided I would spend the night at my coworker Emma's apartment. I didn't trust myself to stay there, and more importantly, I didn't trust Colin. I wanted distance before either of us said something we couldn't take back. As I zipped the bag shut, he was still staring at his phone, crying, typing, smiling. The combination should have terrified me sooner. "I'm leaving," I said. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the screen. Then, just before I reached the apartment door, he finally looked up. "They're already on their way." His voice was almost cheerful. "You should stay and hear everyone's side." Something cold crawled up my spine. I slipped my phone into my jacket pocket and quietly started recording before opening the apartment door. I told myself I was being paranoid. 5 minutes later, I realized I hadn't been paranoid enough. The evening air was cool as I crossed the parking lot toward my car. Then headlights flooded the entrance. 2 SUVs rolled in almost together. Doors opened. One by one, Colin's friends climbed out. Victoria, the finance executive, Lauren, one of the attorneys, Danielle, the other attorney, Dr. Emily Carter, and Ashley, the marketing director. 5 people, moving with purpose. I glanced back toward my apartment. Colin was standing on the balcony, watching, waiting. The realization struck me all at once. This wasn't an emotional intervention. It was an ambush. Victoria marched toward me first. "There she is," she shouted. "The abusive psycho." I stopped walking. What? The others spread out naturally, blocking the path to my car and the entrance to the building. Lauren pulled out her phone. She immediately started recording. "We're only here to help Colin collect his belongings safely," she announced loudly, making sure the camera captured her face. "Nobody wants violence." The performance was almost convincing. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed her myself. Danielle kept texting while smiling. Emily looked uncomfortable, but stayed where she was. Ashley refused to meet my eyes. I slowly raised both hands where everyone could see them. "My name is on the lease," I said evenly. "I legally gave Colin 30 days to move out. I'm leaving for the night to avoid an argument. Please let me leave." Victoria walked until she was inches from my face. "You think we're stupid? You've been abusing him for months." I blinked. "That's ridiculous. You control him. You isolate him. You humiliate him." Every accusation sounded rehearsed. Every sentence arrived too quickly, like actors following a script. I backed away carefully. "There are security cameras everywhere." I pointed toward the building. "My phone is recording. Please, don't make this worse." The second those words left my mouth, Lauren's expression changed. She suddenly shouted toward her phone. "Did everyone hear that? She admitted she's secretly recording Colin." Then she screamed, "Get her phone!" Victoria lunged. Instinctively, I turned away to protect my pocket. Before I could react, Danielle slammed into my back. She wasn't much taller than my shoulder, but she knew exactly how to use her weight. The impact knocked my feet out from under me. I crashed onto the pavement. Pain exploded through my shoulder. Danielle wrapped an arm around my neck, trying to pin me. Victoria kicked at my side while grabbing for my jacket pocket. Lauren kept recording. "Stop resisting! Why are you attacking us?" Everything she said was the opposite of what was happening. I realized exactly what they wanted. A video. One that could be edited. One that would make me look violent. I refused to hit them, no matter how badly they hurt me. If I fought back, I'd lose. So I curled my arms over my head and tried only to protect myself. Emily stood frozen. Ashley looked horrified. Neither of them stepped forward. Then I heard footsteps. Fast. Heavy. I looked up. Colin was running toward us from the apartment building. For one impossible second, I thought he'd come to stop them. Instead, he was carrying our entire wooden kitchen knife block. Every knife we owned. He reached us, breathing hard, yanked the first knife free, and shoved it into Victoria's hand. Then another into Danielle's. Another toward Lauren. "You know what to do," he shouted. My heart stopped. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This had become something far darker. Ashley took 2 steps backward. Emily whispered, "Colin, this is too much." He ignored them. "Finish this." I have replayed those words in my head thousands of times. Finish this. Danielle still had me pinned. Victoria raised the knife. My body went cold. I finally managed to pull one hand free. With trembling fingers, I reached my phone inside my jacket. I didn't even unlock it. I hammered the power button 5 times. Emergency SOS. The siren sounded from my phone. Automatic call to 911. I screamed with everything I had. "The police are coming!" My voice echoed across the parking garage. Someone opened a nearby apartment window. Another balcony light switched on. Lauren shouted louder, "She's lying!" Victoria hesitated, only for a heartbeat. Then she lunged. The blade slashed into my upper arm. A white flash of pain exploded through my body. Warm blood soaked my sleeve almost instantly. I screamed. Emily stumbled backward in horror. Ashley burst into tears. "What are we doing?" Victoria lifted the knife again. Danielle tightened her grip. Colin yelled, "Hold her still!" That was when distant sirens filled the night. At first they sounded faint, then impossibly close. Red and blue lights flashed against the apartment walls. Someone else had called 911, not just my phone. A neighbor had witnessed everything from above. Police cruisers flooded the parking lot. "Drop the weapons!" The command thundered through the air. Officers rushed forward with firearms drawn. Victoria froze. Danielle released me. Lauren still had her phone raised, recording until an officer ripped it from her hands. Colin stood there clutching the knife block, screaming that I had attacked all of them. No one believed him. I lay bleeding on the pavement, barely able to breathe. The security cameras had seen everything. My phone had recorded everything. Lauren's live stream had captured even more than she realized. Within minutes, paramedics were cutting away my blood-soaked jacket, while detectives began separating everyone involved. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I caught one final glimpse of Colin. For the first time since I had met him 4 years earlier, he looked genuinely afraid. The next thing I remember clearly was the ceiling of the emergency room. Bright white lights. The smell of antiseptic. A nurse cutting away what remained of my blouse, while another pressed gauze against the stab wound in my arm. The doctors later told me I had been lucky. The knife had missed an artery by less than an inch. I needed 12 stitches, 2 cracked ribs kept every breath feeling like broken glass, and the concussion left me dizzy for weeks. Even now, the scar across my upper arm catches my eye every morning when I get dressed. While I was still in the hospital, a victim advocate from the district attorney's office came to speak with me. I barely remember most of what she said because the pain medication had turned everything into a haze, but one sentence stayed with me. I've rarely seen a case this thoroughly documented. At the time, I didn't understand why. I would soon find out. The detectives wasted no time obtaining warrants for every phone involved. That decision changed everything. Lauren's live stream had already preserved most of the attack before anyone could delete it. Building security cameras captured every angle of the parking lot. My own recording documented the confrontation from the moment Colin's friends arrived. But the phones revealed something even worse. Months of planning. Months of deliberate conspiracy. The group chat read like the blueprint for a crime. They discussed provoking me into defending myself. They planned to edit videos to make me appear violent. They intended to accuse me of domestic abuse, have me arrested, remove me from my own apartment, and move Colin in with Melissa while I fought criminal charges. Then, after the wedding date passed, Colin planned to claim emotional trauma and financial damages while publicly portraying himself as the victim. Every disgusting detail had been typed out long before anyone ever stepped into that parking lot. Even worse, they had used their corporate phones. Successful professionals, lawyers, a doctor, executives, people who built careers on reputation. They had documented their own conspiracy using company property. The detectives could hardly believe their luck. 2 days after the attack, I was still recovering when Emma walked into my hospital room, carrying coffee and terrible vending machine cookies. She looked furious. "You're not going to believe what Colin just did." He had gone to my sports bar. Not once, 3 separate times. He stood inside the dining room, telling my employees, customers, and anyone willing to listen that I had abused him throughout our relationship and attacked his friends without warning. Fortunately, my assistant manager had acted immediately. Every visit was captured by the restaurant's security cameras. Police were called each time. The emergency protective order prohibited Colin from contacting or harassing me in any way. Each appearance became another criminal violation. Instead of helping his case, he buried it. Then Melissa entered the picture. She wasn't content to stay hidden anymore. Using anonymous social media accounts, she spread edited clips taken from Lauren's live stream, carefully trimming away everything that showed the attack beginning. She contacted former coworkers, old classmates, even distant relatives. Fortunately, every fake account, every message, every post became additional evidence. My attorney gave me one instruction: do not respond. So I didn't. I documented everything. Every screenshot, every threatening message, every attempt to damage my reputation. The folder grew thicker every week. About 3 weeks after the assault, another unbelievable development arrived. Ashley asked for a plea agreement. She had finally broken. Her attorney contacted prosecutors with information no one else knew existed. Ashley had secretly maintained a second group chat, one without Lauren, one without Danielle, one where she saved voice messages because she had started feeling uncomfortable months before the attack. Those recordings destroyed whatever defense remained. There was Colin discussing how waiting until after the wedding would make separating more profitable. Melissa laughing about how easy I was to manipulate. Victoria explaining exactly where everyone should stand in the parking lot. Danielle demonstrating how to restrain someone without leaving obvious bruises. Even more horrifying, Ashley turned over videos. The group had actually rehearsed the confrontation inside Emily's home gym. They practiced where each person would stand, who would record, who would shout, who would grab my phone, who would claim self-defense. Watching those videos later made my stomach turn. They hadn't lost control that night. They had followed a rehearsal. By the time the trial began 7 months later, the prosecution had assembled one of the strongest criminal cases anyone involved had ever seen. Walking into the courtroom was surreal. Colin sat beside his attorneys wearing an expensive suit, pretending to be composed. Melissa sat several rows behind him. Lauren, Danielle, Victoria, Emily, and Ashley occupied the defense tables. For a brief second, our eyes met. Not one of them looked sorry, only frightened. The defense tried to argue that they believed they were rescuing Colin from an abusive relationship. There was only one problem. Not a single piece of evidence supported that claim. No police reports, no medical records, no witness statements, no photographs, nothing. The prosecution presented everything in chronological order. Security footage showing them arriving together, video of them surrounding me, Lauren's live stream, my phone recording, the emergency call, body camera footage from responding officers, medical photographs, the knife recovered with Victoria's fingerprints and my blood. Then came the messages, thousands of them, every joke about me, every lie, every plan, every betrayal. The courtroom became silent. Ashley testified for nearly 6 hours. She admitted everything. She described Colin's affair with Melissa. She explained how the group delayed exposing it until after the wedding. She described rehearsing the attack. She admitted everyone knew exactly what was supposed to happen. By the time she stepped down, several jurors looked physically sick. Then Colin decided to testify. It became the biggest mistake of his life. At first, he cried. He claimed he had lived in fear. He insisted I controlled every aspect of his life. Then the prosecutor displayed message after message showing him mocking me, laughing about my trust, calling me his financial backup plan, while promising Melissa she was the only woman he truly loved. His story collapsed. Then came the fatal mistake. Trying to defend himself, Colin blurted out that Melissa had helped him draft his original statement for police because she understood legal wording better. The courtroom froze. Melissa had never admitted helping prepare that false statement. Now Colin had admitted it himself, under oath. The prosecutor smiled for the first time all trial. Closing arguments lasted less than a day. The jury deliberated only 6 hours. When they returned, every defendant stood. Guilty. Again. Guilty. Again. Guilty. Again. The words echoed through the courtroom until I stopped counting. Victoria, Danielle, and Lauren received lengthy prison sentences for attempted aggravated assault, conspiracy, and multiple related felonies. Emily received probation and community service after being convicted as an accessory. Ashley, because she cooperated early and testified truthfully, received probation under her plea agreement. Colin accepted a plea deal before sentencing rather than risk an even longer prison term after the overwhelming evidence against him. Melissa was later charged for her role in the conspiracy and for assisting in preparing false statements during the investigation. Professional consequences followed almost immediately. The attorneys lost their licenses. The doctor lost hers. The executives lost their certifications and careers. Everything they had spent decades building disappeared because they believed they were untouchable. As for me, people always ask whether justice brought peace. The honest answer is, not immediately. Justice doesn't erase nightmares. It doesn't remove scars. It doesn't restore trust overnight. But it gave me something I desperately needed. The truth became public. For months, they had tried to convince everyone I was the villain. In the end, facts spoke louder than lies ever could. Today, the scar on my arm reminds me of that night, not because it represents what they took from me, but because it reminds me what they failed to destroy.